Welcome to the Empowering Perspective Podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Dwyer. And listen, I am just excited. I mean, I can't, it just goes beyond anything I can ever say because this special edition of the Empowering Perspective is a combined joint effort between the Empowering Perspective community and the Uncle Junior Network. So, first and foremost, let me recognize the host of the Uncle Junior Network, the Uncle Junior himself, Garfield Martin. Brother, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it, and it's finally here, man. It's been long overdue. I'm glad
Man,
we finally able
abs-
to put our schedules and brains together and make it happen.
man, absolutely. I'm excited for this. And I want to make sure that I introduce everybody on the panel. So we got two others that's coming. So we're excited to welcome them as soon as they come in. But right now, I want to introduce my good friend, my brand new good friend, actually, Mr. Chris McClellan from Chris from across the table. So, Chris, welcome to today's show, brother.
Greetings. I appreciate this day. That intro was deep.
Was it? You like that?
That intro was deep.
Hey, man,
Right?
Sheesh.
I want people to think, brother. That's all it is. I just want people to think. And I think that's kind of like what all of this is all about today. So in this conversation, we are getting into that deeper realm of thought processing, right? So as mature men, we kind of talked previously. I'm knocking on the door 49. Chris told us earlier that he's 41. And Garfield, you are 47?
I'm 46. I'll be 47 this year.
Okay, so we kind of, we're a little senior when it comes down to men. I consider ourselves senior, seasoned, if you will,
Seasoned,
right?
yeah.
And I believe that the collective levels of awareness that we possess, we can share some information, not just from our experiences, but from our experiences, collective knowledges that we gathered, shared experiences as well. I don't want to make sure I don't want to leave that off. We have institutions of higher learning, so all of that stuff combined together, I think we can present some things to the younger men to kind of help them not make the same mistakes that we made in life. And that's what I believe that this conversation is going to bring to the table. Now, that being said, hold on, I don't want to leave this young man out, right? So we done got everybody introduced. So next, I want to introduce my good friend, Mr. Victor Viziant.
The device already ready to connect.
He does his own
The
introduction. There he
external
is.
sound mode. FM voice mode.
Vic, welcome to today's show, brother.
The device already ready to connect. The external sound mode.
Let me wait. Welcome to today's show, Vic. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm pretty good, man. Hey,
That was amazing.
hey, you like that?
We do.
Hey, look, we had a power outage at the other location. You would not believe the
Oh,
scramble
man.
that I
Oh,
had
man.
to do. You know what I'm saying? So I apologize for my lighting. I apologize for my bed head. But I don't feel like dropping my hair right now and dealing with it. um, you know, it's always good to get invited to somebody else's platform. So, and pardon me for being a little bit tardy.
That's all right, man. That's all right. Listen, it's an honor just to have you on the show, man, and I greatly appreciate that. So one of the things that we was talking about just now is that based upon our experiences and collective levels of awareness to include high institutions of higher learning and things of that nature, we collectively have a lot of things that we can impart to the younger generations just so that they do not make some of the mistakes that we have made in our life. And one of the things that we all share our ages. I'm knocking on the door 49. Your Uncle Junior, he's 46. Chris, he's 41. And Vic, if you don't mind, how old are you, sir?
I'm 43.
Okay, so there you go. So we're all within that range of 40 plus, right? And again, this kind of gets after a lot of the things that we want to talk about. So one of the first things I really want to look at is like masculine development. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is that I want to consider it from the perspective of those first who were raised in a dual parent home, and then those of us who were not. So when it comes down to it, what did masculine development look like for you as a young adolescent prior to adulthood? Like as you were growing up in your teenage years, what did that look like? Any one of you guys who raised in a dual family home, please go first.
Was you dual, Vic?
Yeah, I was. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm late, so I shouldn't
Yeah.
speak first. So
All right.
go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I was raised in a dual family household. Um, My dad had some demons that he fought throughout his lifestyle, based off of some things that happened in his early adulthood. His 14. My dad's dad died early on in life when my dad was a teenager. So my dad didn't have a father around for his those teenage years, those critical teenage years. His dad wasn't around. And then when I was in ninth grade, so that would make me about 14. As I mentioned, my dad had some demons, and because of those demons, not our relation, partly our relationship, but as well as our living conditions kind of sort of changed to whereas he really wasn't in the house as much. So growing up, I had good structure, kind of sort of growing up. I was raised in a Pentecostal household where my dad, even though he had his demons, he was a minister in the church. My mom was a missionary. So I had a really solid Christian foundation growing up. Some things were traditional, some things wasn't necessarily biblically based. We're not here necessarily to talk about that, but just to kind of give you some context or kind of background before I start talking about my development. So because of all of those things, a lot of stuff that was inputted in me early on was based off of what the Bible said and how I'm supposed to act. So that's kind of sort of the base for that. As far as what I got from my father, it was mostly that. Um, Conversations about sex were very limited. A lot of conversations were more so, "Hey, do this or that." At the same time, I had a great father.
Yeah.
He allowed us to speak. He allowed me to, if I had something to say, not necessarily challenge him, but be able to articulate or be able to come to him with a problem and address it using tact. So I learned tact growing up. That is one thing that I did learn. I didn't really learn too much about women and how to pick women or choose women or anything like that. Didn't learn a lot of financial, um, different things like that. But as far as my masculine development, I would say, even though I had 2 parents, I would say a lot of mine probably came from outside of the home. Meaning I started playing sports at 7 years old. So all the way until I graduated high school, for the most part, I played sports. I always had coaches and other male mentors and figures around. So um, that's kind of sort of how my masculine, whatever masculine I got kind of got inputted into me was then around those ages. So
Yeah,
if that
that's
kind of sort of makes
and thank you
sense.
for sharing that. No, it does make sense, and I thank you for sharing that because what I'm understanding is that you were raised in. I'm gonna use the word traditional, but then that still is subjective as well. But you were raised in a biblically based home, in essence.
Yeah.
And in some cases, when we look at biblically based homes, it's a lot of don't do this and don't do that and don't do this and don't do that, as
Mhm.
opposed to what you can do. And I like the fact that you kind of touched in there that we didn't talk a lot about women, we didn't talk about sex at all, because
Mhm.
that's one of the things that you find when it comes down to those environments. The taboo of sex is the conversation that is not had at all. In fact, stay far away from that. But that is a
Yeah.
facet of life that we must broach as men. I mean, got it. You panel of men, we all know what I'm talking about here. I need that conversation early so I'll know how to handle myself when presented with said young lady. So now I appreciate you sharing that. Mr.
Yeah.
Vizian, please, by all means, continue yours.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Well, I'm 43. I'm the oldest of two. Um, my brother is 18 months younger than me, and we were both raised in the same household under the same roof with in a two-parent household. My mother worked, um, and she took care of like other family members, like that were getting older and stuff. She was like the first primary caregiver. She was probably the most responsible person that could just show up for anybody. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? My dad worked a third shift job for about 10 or 15 years, and he was a janitor. You know what I'm saying? So he the time that I would spend with him, I remember more of it in like my younger years, of course, because when I turned 14, 15, I was starting to push lawnmowers and make some money, you know. So like my masculine development um, was mostly just based on my dad just leading by example, you know what I'm saying? And on those weekends where um, you know, kids would be outside riding their bikes and you know what I'm saying, and we would do the same things, but he was like, you're gonna rake the leaves first, you're gonna clean up first, you're gonna do some chores or some work around the house first. And it basically, I think in the masculine development piece of it, it means you had, to me, I learned that you had to earn every single thing that you want to do. I don't care if it's something simple, like if it's a vacation or whatever. Yeah, like you got to go justify why you're on vacation. You got to justify why you sitting still and not moving. Because what I was able to extract from his parenting style in the environment that we had is that like nobody's giving you anything, and I'm not giving you nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like even the dog got a job to do, you know, and respect is love. And if you want to respect, if you want love, then you have to earn it. You know what I'm saying? And most things you earn are usually accompanied by respect. I don't think you usually have love without respect, you know, anyway, especially amongst men. So uh, I think in my masculine development, it allowed me to uh, be better at networking. It made me a better leader. It made me more accountable in terms of like what I would and wouldn't commit my, you know what I'm saying, energy to. Yeah, of course, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to take some chances. You're going to take some risks here and there. But the seed being planted, because like children learn by example. You know what I'm saying? Even when they don't have the words, because a lot of times the adults don't even have the words to be able to teach the child how to connect what they're experiencing firsthand with a tangible experience. They're actually in the middle of the experience, and it's something that they're doing, that they're dealing with in the present, is going to be useful in the future. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard to conceptualize a conversation for a child that's digestible, that the child will be able to say, okay, I can take this to school with me. You know what I'm saying? When your parents have been working in environments where maybe it's not the healthiest, most toxic, maybe not necessarily getting the most pay, because wherever you give your most energy to is really what you bring back into your house. You know what I'm saying? Whether you know it or not. And I say that to say that because my dad worked third shift job, and I didn't get a lot of regular interaction with him, but the examples that he set early on made me understand why he had to take the role that he took, you know, in the household. And not having to deal with something sometimes is the benefit of somebody else doing their job, right? Like the way my dad lived and you know what I'm saying, and worked hand in hand with my mom showed me that he had a role and he stayed in his lane and he did what he was supposed to do. And that actually made it easier for me to process my military career when I was in. And like a lot of times the written rule, the unwritten rule is that you don't speak unless you're spoken to. And my dad didn't have a whole lot of words, you know what I'm saying? So and if you pay attention to what he's doing, you won't care as much about what he's saying or not saying. So I try to balance that in my own delivery sometimes, and I'm not that good at it, but I don't care because I care more about people paying attention to the actions that I have. You know what I'm saying? So the masculine development, if I had to best capture it, and I hate saying something cliche and regurgitated that we got from the army or whatever, but my dad led by example, and I paid attention, and that was just it.
I love it. I love it. And so for you, what I'm hearing is that he was a man of standards that believed in hard work, and everybody got to pull their weight.
Absolutely, like nobody gets a free ride.
Absolutely. Okay, great. And thank you for sharing that because these, so again, these are important things for us to understand as young men. Young men need to understand that because I would tell you that I am sure that there is a young man at some point in time that felt that their father was too hard or their mother wasn't, was too lenient, whatever the case that looks like. But this is not a story that's just specific to your situation. This is a probably more common than you even care to realize. But a lot of times, because it's our situation, we think it's just me. Now, this is where we transition now because we get to talk to the two on here who were raised in a single parent home. So, Chris, if you don't mind, sir, would you kindly share your experience with us?
As it relates to masculine development,
Yes, sir.
I'm jealous of all of you. Well, the two of you that spoke that had a dad, I'm jealous. I had my mom, my aunts, and my grandma. I didn't even know what masculine development was. I mean, I had my godfather. He was the local, you know what I'm saying, the neighborhood mechanic. I went over there sometimes. I had my, you know what I'm saying, my godfather, my uncles, but I never had anybody in the house. So I didn't know what any of this stuff was. In fact, I was told to just deal with it. Like, I didn't know what any of this was. I didn't start really developing as a man until I got out of the house, until I like left and removed myself from the environment altogether. I had to figure something out. I knew that this wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I went and sought out the answers. I got them from some people in my life, mostly from the internet. Um, and then once I started to see a recurring theme, I started to move in that direction. And the recurring theme is men have to produce. So put yourself in a position so that way you can be useful and produce.
Yeah.
And that's really when the development started, because in order to be useful, you have to be disciplined enough. So learning discipline was tough. I never really I had it, but I never really had it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my story. I'm still, even like 20 years later, I'm still learning, because I had a bunch of time in my youth that I was never taught any of this. Like I said, I'm jealous of both of you. I wish I would have had that. I sincerely do. So I guess that's my experience.
Man. Well, brother, I appreciate you sharing that. And what I would tell you, again, it's nothing. It's nothing that is uncommon, believe it or not. And I hate to say it that way, but that is a true statement. For me, a lot of similarities there, but the difference I can say for me is that I had male figures that I could lean on, and I found a way to gravitate to them. Right, you have my grandfather, who I thought was just amazing. I thought this man walked on water. Seriously, not that he did everything right. I really loved my grandfather, and I seen a lot of the things that he did, right, wrong, and different. It didn't matter to me. It was my grandfather, and that was the consistency at a certain point in my life of what manhood was. And then when he passed away, there were some other men as well. So my Uncle Glenn, he was just an awesome guy. What I seen him do is work, take care of his family, and spend time with his wife. And every Sunday, what stood out to me is that they would always go out to eat. He always took his wife out to eat every Sunday. And so for me, what I started to conceptualize is
Golden Corral.
no, they went to Morrison's. I don't know if you guys remember Morrison's.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But for me, that's what I conceptualize manhood. Manhood is men. Men provide and protect when it comes down to their family. As long as the provision is there, then you can focus on ensuring that you protect what you provide for. And so, I have my Uncle Mike as well. So my Uncle Mike, I thought, was the closest thing to Eddie Murphy. He was handsome, he was funny, and I always enjoyed when he came around because I got a chance just to hang out with my Uncle Mike. And then on the other hand, you have my Uncle Tony. Now my Uncle Tony's in a special category in my life, still yet to this day. Like, we are so close that, I think I really do move in space. Like, my Uncle Tony's like my brother. So he was like that different masculine voice in my life, to where, when he told me something, it resonated with me, but then I could just hang out with him and just kick it. One of the things that he told me that I will never forget, and it still resonates in my mind today, because I think we all go through that period of time that you want to get out in the streets and do street stuff. And I got to that point at a certain, stage of my life where he always showed up when I was trying to get in trouble. I say it that way intentionally. When I was trying to get in trouble, he always showed up. And one day he looked at me, he said, "Stop." He said, "Go do what you're supposed to be doing. These streets are not for you." He said, "You were destined to do something greater." And I don't know what it was, man. It was just something about that statement that just stuck with me, and it never left. And then, like you, Chris, it started to unfold as I got older, as an adult male. And it just was like, I'm not saying that my mother didn't teach me any masculine traits. I got discipline from my mother. My mother probably is the most disciplined person I've ever met in my life. When she puts her mind to something, she sticks to it. And she was a survivor. So those things I got from her. So as a man, that kind of like, yeah, I kind of found a way to take that energy and transfer it. Like, what does that look like coming from a man? And so I kind of looked at the men in my life and said, okay, this is how men move. This is how they behave. This is how they respond to adversity. And that's the thing that kind of helped me get into a more developmental mindset as I became an adult. Now, this is kind of like where we take this stuff and see how those lessons transferred into adulthood. So going back to the men that were raised in a dual parent household, how did those lessons manifest itself in your life as a young adult as just kind of launched out into manhood?
I think it comes from stories. You know what I'm saying? Like, life is about allegory. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can only we are at our best ability to teach when we have a tangible experience that we can teach from. So, like, I would get a lot of my life lessons from my dad explaining something that he would see, and it would just be a comical conversation for him just to vent, but I would get a lesson from it. Like, for instance, he told me this story one time about he was at work one night, and there was some person that started working there that was I would say more of the LBGT community. You know what I'm saying? During this time, we talking like early 70s. You know what I'm saying? Or going into the 80s. And the story was hilarious because there was one guy that he described not being very open to having, you know, uh, a more feminine man working, you know what I'm saying, doing the same job. So instantly some negative competition. And my dad gave him some advice and said, hey, I wouldn't mess with him if I was you, and then of course Buddy didn't agree with my dad's guidance, and eventually they traded hands and Buddy got mopped, you know what I'm saying, ironically, you know. So the bottom line is that you got more resources to observe how somebody's moving before you decide to engage with them. You know what I'm saying? Decide if it's worth your attention. And that was a lesson that I extracted from it, but it was still hilarious, you know what I'm saying, the way that he would describe it. Of course, I'm using, you know what I'm saying, a paraphrased, way of explaining it. But what I learned from him is that a man is supposed to have certain experiences, supposed to witness certain things, supposed to have some scars, because how can you provide or produce if you don't know how to manufacture anything from like from your own personal metal, your own personal resources? You have to have a survival gene. How can anybody trust you if you can't do for yourself? You know what I'm saying? Like, earlier you I think Chris, I think you hit the word produce. And when you think about it from the, like, just pivoting off of, you gentlemen mentioned like being raised in Christian households or being raised with Christian values and stuff like that, and being useful. Everybody has a purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like, based on us being social creatures, our purposes should be aligned with helping each other be better, in some way, shape, or form. Because you don't find out who you are until somebody shows you who you are.
Yeah.
Like, you can have your own picture of it, you know what I'm saying? But you got to test that theory by doing on behalf of others and living a life of service, So I look at all the different ingredients that make up my personality, what I do, my talents, you know what I'm saying, my experience and all that stuff. And I'm appreciative that my dad made the sacrifices that I couldn't understand then that I understand now. And I even started crossing these thresholds even in my late 30s, going into my 40s, and I wound up writing my second book, which is called The Business of Me. And I wasn't able to write that book until I got a better understanding about the role that my dad had, the stuff that he could afford to care about and the stuff that he couldn't afford to care about. So I said all that to say is that the most important thing that I extracted in my experience was that you have to understand that it's your role to create opportunities for other people when you're here. You know what I'm saying? Or else did you even exist? Does a man even exist if he's useful, if he's useless? Like nobody wants to be the person that has to be picked up, fed, and paid to do the job that they already been hired to do by the same person. You know what I'm saying? At some point, are you useful? You know? And I remember some of those conversations where, you know, like my dad would call me and my brother lazy or sorry or something like that. And it was because we were. And we were young and we didn't understand that you only have finite opportunities to show how good or bad you are at something, and people gonna figure it out. You know what I'm saying? We saw Mark Sanchez with a butt fumble, you know, and we was like, okay, he's not the guy. Like it's some things you can't recover from. You know what I'm saying? And at a minimum, you got to earn your name. Like if you've been raised by your dad, he didn't get his name by accident, and especially if his granddad, well, if his dad was an upstanding man, you know what I'm saying? Like, let you come out the third one in the line, and each one of the men that preceded you with your name has something that goes with their name. Like for instance, like my granddad, he made barbecue grills and sold them to local grocery stores. He was an entrepreneur. You know what I'm saying? Everybody knew what he was about. You take those 55-gallon drums, take the table saw, cut them, you know, and stand there and all those sparks hitting him in the face, and then he paint them and then he load them up on his trailer and take them to the grocery stores and hustle them and sell them right to the grocery store. You know what I'm saying? Or he had customers that would come order some custom directly from him, you know, but because he was able to produce, he was useful. You know what I'm saying? Which enabled him to provide. See, that's the funny part, right? You got to produce for other people so you can provide for your people. It's a push-pull with a man because you have to put into the community that you want to get old in and old in safely. So you have to invest in the men in that community that's going to secure that environment. You know what I'm saying? So bottom line is a man has to be connected to something greater than himself in order to be useful, relevant, and practical. And if you are listening to this, you got a talent, you got to find it. You know what I'm saying? You're going to find out who you are when you connect yourself to your talent. Otherwise, you're just out here, you know what I'm saying, adhering to distractions. So my pops, in my masculine development, he was focused on what he was responsible for, and nobody went without that he was responsible for. And a lot of people can't even do that for themselves individually, and he was able to do that for everybody. So the older I've gotten, I've realized there's a lot of people that can't do that.
That's good. That's good. I thank you for sharing that. And I like the point you made in reference to the storytelling. I mean, that's so spot on, right? I think that's like when people tell us stories, it allow us to kind of like live vicariously through the lens of the story that they tell us. And we can actually somehow, and it's just like reading books when we were growing up, nursery rhymes and things of that nature, but we can somehow like visualize what they went through. But then the lesson that we learned from that story, we may encounter something in life that may be very similar to that story, or we can apply the exact same lesson that we extract from that story. And it helps us to already have a predetermined course of action as we go forth and move. So I greatly appreciate you bringing that to the table. Uncle Junior.
Hey, let me give a little bit more context about my dad too. I mentioned those things earlier, but my dad was also a hard worker. My dad did have some college. He ended up having to leave college to take care of one of my older sisters. And he ended up working for the post office for a number of years. He worked hard, even though he was dealing with his issues and stuff like that. He still, for many years, was able to make it to work and, you know, do everything that came with it. I was going through some photos not too long ago, and I saw a photo of myself carrying a can of oil, right? I had these little I don't know, I was young. I probably had to been about 4 or 5, maybe 6 years old at the most. And I remember the house we was at, and I remember that day when I was going through the photos. Um, and we had this old beat up raggedy car, and my dad was outside changing oil in. This when oil used to come in a can. You had the little triangle thing that you had to punch in on both sides. You know what I mean? So that's what it was, one of those cans. And I remember helping them,
That
but I
oil came
don't.
from Acme.
Yeah, Acme, yeah. But I don't. But as I was thinking, I was like, I don't remember my mom being there at all. I only remember me and my dad working on the car. But my mom obviously is the one who took the picture. You know what I mean? But to this day, I never remember my mom being there, but I do remember the incident. And I do remember spending that time with my father. Um, so I did see a lot. My father was a provider male. My father worked. My mom stayed at home and raised all of us. She didn't work, I don't think, until I got to high school, probably when the transition and things started happening in our life. That's when she started working. That's when she started driving. My mom didn't have a driver's license, I don't think, until I was in high school. So that's the type of situation and household that I grew up in. And I did learn a lot about how to provide. I thought that no matter what you provide, and that's what I did. I still believe in that. I think that was a good lesson learned. I think that I still apply that lesson to my life right now. And good, bad, or indifferent. This is I feel that, men should provide for their wife. Um, I repeat, their wife. Because I think, I ain't gonna get off into that, but I think that is one of the main lessons I learned was to and I say hard worker, but I mean, work efficiently, like get something out of it. We like to use the term hard work, but sometimes hard work implies that you're doing way more than what you really need to do, or you're doing, whatever. But I like, working efficient. Um, and he worked for the post office. He worked for a long time, and I got some good information from him when it comes to how it comes to being able to work, and how it's our responsibility as men to provide, so, and to protect. So those are just, those are two of the lessons that I kind of learned that, eventually manifested into my life, early on. I got married at 19 the first time. I was 20, and I had already had a child. So I became a provider male at 20 years old. At the time, my wife worked, but after so long in the military, for many years, she didn't work. She eventually went back to work, got her degree, and moved on and different things like that. But for a long time, I was the only provider in the house. So I think being a provider, being a hard worker, all these different things like that are some of the lessons that manifested early, excuse me, early on in my life.
Yeah, so I want to. So, Chris, I'm like you on this one, brother. I'm a little jealous. Um, and it's not jealous from the point of, mad or anything. Like, I think I want to go back to what Vic said, because as a man, I can live vicariously through these stories and learn from what you guys learned from your fathers. Here's the thing I want to share. Chris, if you don't mind, I'll go first on this one.
I'm a fly on the wall.
So my father was in the military, and he had as far back as I can remember, I think the first duty station I can remember him being at was Germany. He was stationed in Heidelberg, Germany, and we came back to the States. And so, when I got the opportunity to spend with him, what I would say is that my mother never denied that. She never denied me an opportunity to spend with my father whenever he came back home. And so I got the opportunity to spend time with him, but the most valuable masculine lessons that I learned came from those gentlemen I mentioned previously, because I spent more time with them. And so when I look at each one of them, I could see, from an outside perspective, that my father was a provider. That was easy to see. But that bit of information was consistent with the information that I got from my Uncle Glenn and from my grandfather. So those lessons, although repetitive, Again, it's just one of those things that kind of stuck with me. And then continuously, they were problem solvers. Like if a problem came up, like my Uncle Glenn would fix it or my grandfather would fix it. Like within that space, they were men of like accountability. I'm not saying that they were perfect, not even close. Now, I don't think there is any man that we know that we've ever met that is a perfect man. So we need to take that conversation off the table. But one of the things I do remember is that even in their imperfection, they never lost who they were. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned. We all make mistakes, but those mistakes don't define us. And so every last one of them done something wrong at some point in time in their life, and I may have been aware of it. But when I seen them, they still showed up to be the man I knew before the mistake ever happened. And so for me, that resonated because when I look at it, that means I never lose my identity within any version of a mistake that I make. I think that was huge for me because going forward, it's not like I was intentionally making mistakes, but guess what? Mistakes are unavoidable. So as I make mistakes, I learn from mistakes. And so the idea is to continue to learn. And that's probably one of the best lessons I learned growing up. But I don't know when I applied it. That's the other part. The application piece was the other part. I didn't learn to apply it until later, but I learned it early. So when I look at these men, like I would talk about, one of them, and I'm not going to be specific right now, but I'm going to talk about one of them in particular. Because when you look at them, that person may not have the best of this or the best of that or the best of that. But here's the best part about it. I've witnessed 10 different children that are not his call him daddy. Not because he was their father, but because he was a father figure to them. That goes back to what Vic was talking about. Like, how are you giving back to the community? Like, how are you helping to build other people up? And what I understood for me is that is what men's supposed to do. And in order to get there, I need to understand what abilities that I have. And for me, I progressively learned that the best ability that I have is responsibility, accountability, and availability. Those three things literally transferred into the identity of who I was at a later point in time. I know I kind of went the long route to get to my point, but my point is that it took me a minute to take all these bits of information from these different men and package it into something that was usable for me. And
can I give you a word to go for that?
Absolutely.
Big college word. Amalgamation.
Yep.
Because you're combining an example from a person who's lived multiple stories, multiple lives. Like all of us have lived multiple lives. You know what I'm saying? We've been a child. We've been employees for places that made us hate the place. We've been obligated to something else. We've been dutiful in service. We have been veterans. We are still, coaching and mentoring and leading right now. You know what I'm saying? This is who we are. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's always present. It's always present. So the amalgamation word is something that I learned when you start talking about like in art spaces and creating and stuff like that. People copy off each other all the time, right? And people say imitation is the best form of flattery or some paraphrase version of that. Yeah. But the reality is the person you copy from somebody else, the person they learned from copy from somebody else. So it's an amalgamation. You get a more refined and evolved version of the thing that you like when you find a reason to connect to it, and you become the evolved, refined version. So like one of the things you hit on too, I took a note, you said mistakes and then learning how to apply what you learn from it, right? It's not even a mistake until you fail to apply what you learned from it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just an incomplete lesson. It's like learning how to fly without landing. You know what I'm saying? If you don't go back and learn how to land, you know what I'm saying? What was the point of getting into the course, right?
Right.
And then the best ability is availability, period. You can't learn none of the stuff that we talking about if you ain't available, if you ain't present. You know what Absolutely. I'm saying? So it's more than just being there. You have to be available. You have to be receptive. You got to be coachable, and you got to be open to correction. You know what I'm saying? And without that, we don't fix or maintain our societies at all. You know what I'm saying? And when you look at the separation in that, that's the difference. That's the difference between somebody being in jail, somebody being in the grave, somebody being in unproductive relationships, somebody being the unproductive person in a relationship, some people being blocked from different perspectives, and some people not being receptive to other people's opinions. You know
There
what
you
I'm
go.
saying?
Yeah,
All of
man.
that
Empowering
comes from,
perspectives.
yeah, yeah. You are not able to have an empowering perspective if you cannot accept correction. Period.
There you go. Absolutely, man. I like
And I
the.
wanted to answer something real quick too, Coach. I just got a question for you.
Yeah.
Because you talk a lot about your uncles. How much time were you around your uncles? Like how often were you in their presence to be able to soak up all this information? Because I just personally, my uncles on my mom's side, they wasn't around, and on my dad's side, they died, pretty early on in life.
Yeah.
So I only had, by the time I was a teenager, I really didn't have any uncles that I was
Yeah.
around anymore. So
So great question. For me, I spent a lot of time with my uncles, and it's one of the three that I'm talking about in particular. Like my uncle Glenn, the one I shared with you that took his wife out to eat every Saturday, and he always provided for his family. He would come pick me up, and me, him, and my cousin, his son, we would all go to the YMCA every Saturday. This was like a lockstep thing, like something that I could expect to do. And the other thing I could expect for us to stop by Burger King when we leave the YMCA. So that was, I would look forward to that, and that means something to a kid. You know what I'm saying? Let's not mistake it. That means something to a kid. My Uncle Tony, I would go spend the weekend. I would go spend the summers at my grandmother's house every summer. So during that time, I was always around my Uncle Tony. So I look forward to that time. It wasn't just my Uncle Tony, but he was the masculine figure over there. It was my Uncle Tony, it was my Aunt Gail, and my Aunt Ann. I look forward to seeing all three of them every summer and spend a great deal of time with them. My Uncle Mike, well, for a large portion of my life, I lived with my grandmother on my mother's side, and my Uncle Mike was always there. So with that being said, I always look forward to it. So when you ask the amount of time that I spend with these men, I spend a lot of time with them. And my mother was receptive to them because they all worked to help her raise a young man. And I think that was the key for me. And so I kind of piecemealed information within the environment collectively. And the result is what you're seeing right now. And I appreciate every last one of them because of all that they've done for me. So wherever they are and whatever it is they do, I always view them as my uncle. I don't care what the status of the situation is right now. I look forward to seeing them and always have. So thank you for that question. I think that's a great question because there are a lot of men who, or a lot of, let me say, there's a lot of young men, young boys who may be in a similar situation, right? And they're yearning to spend time with their father, and unfortunately, the father may not necessarily be in that location. Go lean on an uncle. You know what I'm saying? Let that uncle be a surrogate father for you for the time being. It doesn't devalue your father, it doesn't take away from your father. But there's nothing wrong with spending time with that another man to kind of tap into that masculine energy so that you can see how they move in space. That's an important thing. And thank you for asking that question, sir, because I think that helped somebody just now. Brother Chris.
Chris is like, I'm a fly on the wall. He's like, I ain't got no lessons. I ain't getting none.
If we're talking about how the lessons that I learned about masculine development are and what I do with those lessons to make me the man that I am now, I say this a lot. Y'all hear me say this a lot. I had to let go of my ego. I had to realize that I did not have all the answers. I had to realize that I did not know everything. I had to realize that this ain't what it's supposed to be. So let me go find what it's supposed to be, because this has helped me get here, but I know I can't stay here and keep these lessons if I want to excel. So, and one of the key things was discipline, being reliable, actually being somebody that somebody wants to call if they need something or if they want something. And I guess learning how to take responsibility for where my life is, understand that no matter what I tell myself, at the end of the day, it's still my fault that I'm here, and recognize that instead of trying to make it seem like it's somebody else's fault that I'm here, and then take those lessons and move on. I know I can't keep the same mindset if I want to progress, but it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. So I also have to learn how to process it efficiently and not just take it in and just be and have just tunnel vision on this. This is just one way of being. So yeah, I guess that's my story. I mean, that's really it. I didn't have what you guys had. So I'm learning what you guys had now.
That's all
You
right.
understand what I'm saying? So
Amalgamation, baby.
yeah,
Allegory.
that's really what it is. It's like I'm being consumed by the group because all of your stories all have lessons in them that I could have learned 10 years ago and been a whole lot farther.
Yep.
You understand what I'm saying? And I also have to understand that it's my fault. No matter how I spin it, it's still my fault. It's still my responsibility, and nobody is coming to save me. Somebody might help me. Somebody might give me a hand up and be like, all right, here. But nobody's going to take my life and mold it into what I need it to be. I got to do that.
Yeah.
That's like got to be one of the harshest lessons, though. You know, like
It is.
what
It
would
is.
what would you say to somebody else that's 41 from just a similar family structure? Because see, the reason I ask that question is that a lot of times you get people that tell people what they should be doing, but they don't have equity in that situation. Like I don't tell men that that weren't raised with their fathers what they should and shouldn't be doing. I hope that those men pay attention to conversations amongst men that have had that. Like you represent that. You being the fly on the wall. Like and I say that because the other veterans on this panel that have been to different countries and different hostile environments, one thing you don't do that our foreign policy isn't the greatest at is walking in and imposing your will. You're already there, you know what I'm saying, against other people's wishes, right? So the best thing you could do is not be a burden to anybody and sit back and be the fly on the wall that you are. And a lot of people do not understand the power in being the fly on the wall. You know what I'm saying? You let other people define their boundaries with you, and you just have to sit back and pay attention. You get to use your ears and eyes to max capacity because you've been talking. You talked enough to get into the room or wherever you are, the space wherever you are. Now it's time to listen. Your mouth is just supposed to get you in there because a closed mouth don't get fed, right? But a person that's talking ain't got time to eat. So the food gonna get cold. You're not even
Gotta have
digesting.
some balance.
I said that before. I said that before. When you are in a room with a bunch of men who are trying to who have done what you are trying to do, you shut up.
Man, look, I've been saying this in an empowered perspective type of way. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times
we need to quit that. We need to just be point blank. Hey, these dudes
That's what
know
I'm-
more than you. Shut up. Shut up
for
and
real.
listen. What's wrong with you?
Understand something. I think men inherently understand that with each other. I think generally speaking, when we in somebody else's space, you're like, oh, we submit that the other person is the subject matter expert in that space. You know what I'm saying? Like we talking about counseling and coaching. I'm not leading that. I'm sitting back taking notes now when coach talk. I'm on his platform. You see what I'm saying? Like I'm in his territory. And as a matter of fact, like to give
this
you
is
an
going to be
example,
on replay. I'm replaying this. Please
like,
believe me.
like look, when somebody invites you into their space, that's your opportunity to take notes. And I've been saying that. You see, when I be making my Facebook posts, I'm like, yo, if I'm not talking to you, that's your invitation to sit down and take the information. I am doing the same thing. I'm practicing what I preach.
Yeah.
So like to capture that, Coach, you mentioned the importance of your uncles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that you hit on that because one of the things that I'm doing next month, I'm flying all my uncles out here to Texas and my cousin. I'm gonna put them up in my properties. We're gonna watch the Alabama Texas game. I'm gonna show them all the things that I've done in real estate. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey,
You see
look,
that? You see that, Coach? How
I
you
did.
slapped it in there?
Do you see? Y'all saw the reaction to that? Like
It was
let me tell you,
smooth. It was smooth.
It was
He was
smooth,
doing
right?
he was doing so well
was
until he
smooth.
threw that in there. I'm just throwing that out.
Hey, look, it's better than throwing the interception.
Good
So,
point. Good point.
so, but taking advantage of the environment to show my uncles the work that I've done. You know, like very few people get themselves in a position where they can do an all expense paid trip for their family. Like, who's ever done that for you? You know what I'm saying? Nobody's ever done it for me. But the ability to recognize it and not having it myself, I know somebody else hasn't had it. So I want to give it if that's what I want to receive. You see what I'm saying? Like, how can you recognize what to do with an experience if you haven't provided it?
Right.
And as a man, what's your primary goal to do? Create and provide, right? Somebody said in the comments earlier, said that let's see here, see if somebody highlighted or whatever, but it says something about being co-creator, you know what I'm saying, with your creator. Because like the reality is this, regardless of religious belief, if you believe that a creator made you in their image, then your job is to create. You can't be a derivative of nothing else but a creator, right? And in one of those things, too, in the notes that I took, you said availability, responsibility, right?
Mhm.
I agree that availability is probably the best ability because you can't do anything unless you're present, right? But you brought up about your uncle taking you to Burger King after leaving the Y, right?
Mhm.
Predictability. You have to have some level of predictability. You know what I'm saying? So other people know what to do with your presence and they're responsible for your protection too. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
If you're unpredictable, who can depend on you?
Yeah.
You know, so unless they just depend on you to be unpredictable, you know,
Yeah.
that might be the case too.
Well, let me clear it up real quick because I don't want anybody out there to get confused. When I gave it in that order, that's an equation. So you must first be responsible. This and Chris is literally articulating it to the science. He is saying that it is my fault, right? So he is taking responsibility for his life. Once the person learns to take once a person learns to take responsibility of their life, then through the relationships that they start to create at that particular point in time, because you talked about being a creator, they will begin to create relationships with the right people. We talked about that before the show, right? They will create relationships with the right people and become accountable to those people. And then what you'll find is that they become available to other people for those shared lessons to flow. So when you ask the question about my uncles, that's exactly what you heard, because here's the other part to it right now. You don't fly people out to you, and I'm pointing down because that's where you're on my screen. You don't fly people out to you, right, until they've shown themselves to be that person in your life. So you're bringing them to you because not only they're not your uncles just by blood relation, they played a significant value at some point in your life, and this is your way of honoring them by doing so. So I want to make sure that as everybody's hearing us, right, and I love the whole predictability as well, because as we're taking responsibility and being accountable and being more available, other people can begin to predict the positive behavior that we're going to bring to the atmosphere simply by us being who we are. And last but not least, man, I greatly appreciate you bringing Alabama to the table. Not that I don't like Alabama. Not that I don't like Alabama. But you know it's all Georgia over here. Listen, gentlemen, I want to make sure
Look,
that
he slid one in too.
Can I ask something, please?
Hey, act like you've been there before. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Just act like you've been there.
There y'all
Absolutely.
go.
Go ahead, brother.
Can I? All of this is great information, but nobody's really honest about it. And what I mean by that is nobody really says you holding yourself accountable for your actions is going to be embarrassing, is going to be depressing. You're going to feel real crappy. You're going to feel like you're not useful. You're going to feel like all of these negative things about all of the negative things and all of the mistakes you are responsible for in your life.
Yeah.
And a lot of men stay there.
Yeah.
You have to get to a point where you don't want to stay there no more and then move on. That's all I wanted to add. It's not a fairy tale. It's not one of these, oh, if I do this, this will happen. If I do this, all of these emotions that I had to deal with, that I pushed away because I did this, are gonna pop up. How do I deal with that too? You know what I'm saying? There's a complete component, which is like the emotional side of doing that nobody talks about. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's not berries and frolics through the park. This
Absolutely.
is tough. It's
It is
tough. It's hard, and it's probably the hardest thing that a man who has been doing something for a certain way for a certain amount of time and wants to change. It's probably the hardest thing that he'll ever do in his life.
So
Man,
let me jump on that first, Vic, and then I'm gonna give it to you if you don't mind, sir. So I like that. I agree with you 100%. But here's the thing that I cannot do. I cannot rob you of the lessons that life is going to teach you. So if I do that up front, then what's going to happen is either I'm going to deter you from doing the work, or I am going to create a dependency, right, between me and you. However, within the space of that pain and frustration and sometimes anger that you're going to experience, develops this beautiful thing that we call humility. Once we learn to humble ourselves and say, hey, Chris, man, can I talk to you for a second? Yeah, man, what's going on? And I just got some stuff on my chest I was, holding on for like a month or so. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? So there's nothing wrong for a man asking for help. And here's the thing. I can't relate it to you. I can't tell you to say, hey, Chris, ask for help, ask for help, ask for help. You're going to be like, yes, sure, coach, I will. You know what I'm saying? But life will teach you. You can't do it all by yourself. You weren't designed to do it all by yourself. That's why community is so important. That's why I feel empowered to bring men together so we can strengthen our community. There's a lot of young, hurting men in our community right now, and it's manifesting itself from the aspect of dealing drugs, molesting people, things of that nature. That's negative energy that they're expressing simply because they have no idea on what to do with the information in their head or the trauma that they've gone through and have yet to harmonize with. So life has to teach a lesson, and that lesson is supposed to humble you so that you come back to the pillars of your community and ask for help. And through I'm telling you, I can't stress this enough. Through the embracing arms of a community of men who understand how to help men get over their trauma, what you will find is that these young men will stop doing the things they're doing. Vic, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
So a couple of things that I wanted to speak on real quick. What Chris is talking about is reconfiguring himself and reprogramming and everything else, and we talked about everything that goes with it. In a short joke moment, you know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure that's what Android users experience when they buy an Apple product. So they complaining about, you know what I'm saying, all the little stuff that come with it. Well, why I got to do this, or why I got to do it this way, or whatever. But that's what the system calls for you to do. And if you want to thrive in the system, you have to first decide how successful do you really want to be in life. You know what I'm saying? Because like those lessons that we get from like early chores, you know what I'm saying? Because like when you look back at like, you ain't responsible for nothing but your room, your grades, and whatever else I tell you to do around the house. You know what I'm saying? And if you can't be accountable enough on those small things, how do you think that's going to manifest in your other life? You know what I'm saying? In the life that you're, you know what I'm saying, soon to live, no matter what, whether it comes down to, and I see it every day, man, like in my own self, not even in other people, because I'm too busy minding my own business. And I know how inefficient I am in some areas, and I know how much more efficient I could be, you know. I understand that there's distractions that's out there, but a lot of distractions pivot off the things that I set in motion, you know. So I choose to live my life like a warrior, you know what I'm saying? Like always on the lookout, waiting for something to happen, because I'd rather have it and not need it, and need it and not have it. You know what I'm saying? Like I'd rather be prepared, period, you know. And in terms of being prepared, in your mind, you getting prepared because nobody else is coming to save you. So like
when you come down to knowing that nobody's coming to save you, you don't like where you are, you got to hurry up and find your talent, because your talent is going to connect you to your peace. And as far as one of the things you talked about in terms of being around other men, and you know what I'm saying, and letting things materialize so you can fall into your own role. I'll tell you right now, the fastest path for men to connect with other men and understand that is not just to be humble, but you have to have a space for humility. That doesn't necessarily make you humble. Okay. If you look up the word humble by definition, it means defeated. I am not defeated. You know what I'm saying? I am a warrior. I do have spaces to learn and be coachable. Those are moments for humility too, you know, because you have to have a warrior spirit when you're destined to accomplish something, right? Because if you ask yourself, how successful do you want to be, and you got and you're useful, you have to trade some work somewhere to get to your next step, right? You are gonna find out that men display love and affection through respect. You know what I'm saying? But you got to give your network something to respect if you want to be seen. Like if we weren't providing anything, what use would we be right now? If we didn't have any experience that we can articulate, write about, speak on, or have a conversation about amongst ourselves, like we can have this conversation without the camera being on and it still be just as useful. You know what I'm saying? This is really just a phone call, you know, that we're getting a chance to record. And this is like how we live every day. Like we won't have, like if coach calls me, I know we're going to have an intellectually stimulating conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because the work that he does, it reflects in the conversation. You know what I'm saying? And eventually you are what you do. So what are you doing? Somebody mentioned something about correction, and you know, that falls in line with being receptive, coachable, and all this other stuff. What men understand that most other folks do not understand and can't accept is that we can accept being challenged and corrected, especially if it's coming from the right place. You know what I'm saying? Because men inherently understand that nobody's gonna sugarcoat anything for us. If they do, you got to be a diabetic because you had to eat all the sugar coated bits. You know what I'm saying? So we understand that. So like when we're talking, and there's varying degrees of delivery. Some of us have a little bit more experience in certain lanes than others, but nobody dismisses the other person's opinions, points, or none of that stuff. We don't try to take away each other's reality. And that's one of the most important things as a man, is that believe that all things are true. Believe that that person that you're talking to has done everything in that space to have the opinion that they have. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean you have to be disagreeable. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand that nobody started at the same spot. Like we're at a space now, like in our 40s, there's people older than me that listen to me. You know what I'm saying? That ask my opinion on things. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's a privileged position to be in. To even be in a position where you can impart knowledge on other folks. You know what I'm saying? And the worst thing you can do as a human being is be a burden to another human being. So a man doesn't get it past. You have to find your path to being useful. You have to find your path to being able to impart knowledge on other folks. Or else, as a man, if you didn't become useful and you don't have anybody that you can coach, mentor, or anything like that, did you even exist? Because nobody remembers useless people.
So, and I love everything that you're saying. And man, I don't even know what you're going to give us on your final thoughts. So I'm booting up over here. But listen, here's what I want to do. I kind of placed the order in there. Chris, I want you to go last, brother. And here's why. Because I think you bring so much value to this conversation that people need to hear what you have to say. So what I want to do is, let Unc go ahead, give his spiel, then Vic, then myself, and then we're going to leave you with the floor, sir. Is that okay with you?
I'm humbled. Yes. I'm this. Hey, I'm okay. I'm with it. I'm with it.
I love it. I love it. Oh, go ahead, man. You got the floor. Give me your final
Hey.
thoughts. If you were to, let me kind of set the stage. If you had to give a keynote, let's look at it from that perspective. If you had to give a keynote to a bunch of young men graduating and getting ready to launch into life, what would be the guidance that you would give them?
He coach he coaching right now. So if y'all are watching, hey, look, you getting it free over here. Just saying.
I don't know what you're
So
talking about.
tune in to the Power Spectrum podcast all the time. Hey man, that's a lot. When I looked at that question earlier, I was like, where was I going to go with this? Um, and I'm going to kind of go with something that's near and dear to me, and that's consistency. And I'm going to kind of blend it with something that Vic talks about all the time, and that's being good at something. Um, if you're not good at something, you can get good at something through consistency. You see what I'm saying? And everything that we have done and we have done well and that we are successful at had to come by way of consistency. Everything that we have done not so well, or things that a lot of things that we may be falling short of in our life may be because of the consistency in not doing, you know, positive things that build us up, things that make us more financially successful, things that make our relationships successful. So my thing is, consistency, because, and I mean consistency as far as a mindset and as far as action and as far as positive things. Consistency in doing positive things when it comes to your finances, your relationships, and all these different things like that. So I would probably harp on positive things, positive actions in your life, and being consistent with doing those things over time. And I think that's my 2 cents. That's my final thought. And I would think that, the consistency is something that I would put in the kit bag, in the tool bag. Got to have consistency.
Be on the lookout for the consistency coach, aka
Yeah,
Uncle Junior. He's coming.
right
He's
here.
coming. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
All right, Vic.
September.
There it is. Vic, what you got, brother?
So, guidance for pre-adulthood. I would say be the person that you needed. Hurry up and try to become the person that you needed. You know what I'm saying? Like if you become privy to new information and you see people living a life that you would like to emulate, eventually you have a set of questions that you ask. You want to be like me? You want to be like you? You want to be like us? You want to be like them? Every man hits that crossroad, right? When you hit that crossroad, it's easier to make that decision if you already have a talent, if you already have a network, you already have something that's great. You have to be aligned with something greater than you in order to be successful too. Like before, and I always talk about the military because that was a large chunk of the majority of the panel that was up here lives, and most of us joined because it was the second to last option. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is that we had to submit to our circumstances. Everybody submits to something before they make a decision on it, right? The sooner that you recognize that you will have nothing in life unless you submit to something greater than you, because there's people that's already been here that was smarter, with more resources, that lived a less successful life than even you. You know what I'm saying? So what did they get wrong or right? Um, Time will tell. If you live your life in a respectful way and you add value, then you'll understand the pieces that everybody else missed. But whatever the irony of it all is that if you want something for self, you have to be of service to others. So if you're not good at anything, you need to find a way to be good at something so you can make that part of who you are, because you have to become a person of service to fully understand your power as a man, to really embrace and enact your power as a man. You have to be good at something, and that's true for everybody. But I'm not talking to nobody else right now. I'm talking about the people that's gonna correct our societies, maintain the things that we've already been doing very well, and capitalizing on the things that we've mastered. You know what I'm saying, from our era, giving them solid shoulders to stand on. You know what I'm saying, and taking away excuses and being available to assist and also learn throughout assisting too. So when you look at where you are as a young man, find somebody who's living a quality of life that you think that you deserve, and align your talents with that. Hurry up and become good at something and trade work with other people that are doing better than you. Find a way to get into that conversation with your mouth, in a respectful manner, of course, asking the question to be fed. And then when you get to the place where you're supposed to be fed, you're supposed to eat with your ears. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to consume with your eyes. And then if you need a repeat on that lesson, then that's when you use your mouth to ask for more information, more guidance. And that's the space for humility. That's why I say you don't have to be humble. Humble is a misused and overstated word, I think, too many times. And I think it keeps people from jumping out there because they don't want to offend anybody. But it's offensive to be useless. Don't be useless.
I love it. I love it.
Like a mic drop.
I know, right?
Yeah, how am I supposed to follow that?
Bars.
So for me, I think I would approach it in a different fashion. Not so much different, but again, it's going to sound pretty much repetitive, and it's pretty much going to cover a lot of the same things we heard already. I would look at it from the perspective. I would tell them to find their ability, right? So I kind of touched on it earlier. So again, they must first understand that they have to be responsible. So responsibility is the thing that they need to focus on, personal responsibility. Then they need to understand that they need to be accountable. So accountability partners is a thing, and it's important for us to, be around like-minded individuals who can kind of help us to move in the direction that we have already decided to go in our life, hopefully in a positive direction, right? If we can exercise, personal responsibility, and we can get to the point to where we can be accountable, then what you will find is that we can also understand that we can be relatable, right? That's the other piece. So being relatable is important, right? Because that's where relationships happen and all that other great stuff. And the last thing, get outside of your comfort zone. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, because within the core focus, within the fibers of your DNA, you have the ability to adapt. So adaptability is important as well. So when you look at all of these abilities, we talked about responsibility, we talked about accountability, we also mentioned predictability. I don't want to leave that off the table, right? We also talked about relatability, but again, we must intentionally exercise that thing that flows through your veins, those within the fiber of your being, the ability to adapt to adversity. So adaptability is the key to your growth and development. If you're not uncomfortable, you're complacent. That's just what it is. So find a way to get uncomfortable in the direction in which you want to go, so that you will force yourself into what I tend to call exponential growth. That's my keynote. Brother Chris, close us out, man.
Guidance for pre-adulthood. I guess where I would start is making sure that you realize you're not a victim. You're not a victim. You can change your circumstance if you really, really want to. You just have to get over the victim mentality. You have to understand that where you are is your fault, no matter how you spin it. Take accountability for it, learn from it, and move on. That's where I would start. You can't go through life blaming other people for your situation when you can change it if you really wanted to. From there, I guess I would tell them that it's okay to ask for help. Asking for help doesn't mean you stupid. Asking for help doesn't mean you soft. Asking for help doesn't mean you a punk. Asking for help might be the strongest thing you could ever do, because asking for help requires you to put your ego away because you don't know this and you need this person to help you with it. So I guess that would be number 2. And number 3, you all are already said it. Learn how to adapt and get out of your comfort zone, because your comfort zone will keep you complacent. Complacency is a horrible thing, especially for the men. We have to be useful. Our utility is necessary. Like, we don't have an option. So I guess that would be my 3 And number 4, I guess you all have already said it. Find somebody that's doing what you're doing and humble yourself enough to go ask them how they did it. And if they want you to do something for them in exchange, get out of your ego and do it for them, because they're going to probably give you something that could change your life. But they need to see if you can control your ego, and they need to see if you're actually coachable enough to receive it and do something positive with it. So yeah, I guess that's where I would end it off.
I love it, man. I love it. Listen, I just heard at least 3 great keynotes that those young men would actually just excel. If they just follow anything, they followed anything that you guys said, they would excel moving forward in their life. So on behalf of the Empowering Perspective community and the Unkle Junior Network, we just want to thank everybody who actually was in attendance, man. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys for taking time out of your busy Saturday just to spend some time with us. Hopefully something that we said to you resonated. I hope there were some women in attendance and they can take some of this information and just learn. I mean, it's nothing for you to apply. Just understand from the other side of the fence. I am always open to going and listening, because Vic mentioned that earlier, Uncle Junior mentioned that earlier, and Chris. Just going and listen to your space as you train women. And then that's how we learn and grow together. Not being combative, right? Just learning from the other side of the fence. So I hope it's something that we said that actually could shed some light on some of our previous experiences and some of the things that we learned growing up. This is not a space where we're intentionally combative. This is a space where we decide that we decided that we want to grow, and we desire to help as many young men as we possibly can. So again, on behalf of the Empowering Perspective community, the Unkle Junior Network, we appreciate your time. Go follow Uncle Junior on the Unkle Junior Network. Go follow Vic on his network. Go follow Chris. The link is in the show notes that'll take you directly there. So there are no excuses. These brothers are awesome. As you heard, they add a lot of value wherever they are. And we will see you guys hopefully next month, because I want to do this again. But I'll talk with Uncle Junior after this. Let's do it. See,
Let's do it. Let's do it. Just send me the invite.
Hey, I'm down, man.
Listen,
you know what I'm
Just
saying?
send me the invite. Hopefully, I'll have some wins to give y'all once we come back.
I love this, man. We make decisions like that. I love this. Listen, man, you guys go enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Appreciate it. Love you, brother.
Love you too, sir.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey,